You know what the difference between a creek and a river is? Well, myth has it that to be a river, the stream must be at least 100 miles long. And I've heard that the Elkhorn Creek falls 1 mile short of this distance. So it really doesn't qualify as a river. For many of us in Franklin County, Elkhorn Creek holds a lot of memories. And for the many artists and writers that I have known, it holds a wealth of inspiration. One of those artists is Betty Bashore. She's an incredible painter that lives near the Elkhorn and is inspired by it every day. I saw a postcard of her work and I was immediately drawn to the way that she paints creeks and the colors that she uses. They just blew me away. It was wonderful spending the day with Betty. She invited me downtown to her studio in the McClure building, and then she treated me to some of her favorite painting spots. Well, I'm kind of upset with you because you told me you straightened up the studio before I came.
I know, it can get pretty messy.
Well, but I like to, I like to see like the work in progress and stuff like that.
Yeah.
How'd you come across this studio?
I was sharing a studio space in Georgetown with 4 other women. And I decided that it was too much interaction and I needed a private place.
Oh.
And I came and swam in the morning and then drove to Georgetown, and I swam in Frankfurt, and I just thought, I need something in Frankfurt.
Yeah.
And so the McClure building was just opening up. The Dunns, I think, had just recently renovated the top floor, and so I came up here and I went through, they had a big open house and they had all the windows open, and I just picked this studio because it was small space, physically, large space, visually.
Yeah.
The views out the window, the light in here is just fantastic, and I just fell in love with it and decided this would be something I wanted to try. I didn't know if I could make it or not as far as just affording it, if my art would pay for itself or how that would pan out, so it was a real leap for me.
How has it worked out?
Great.
Yeah.
I mean, I was listening to this video by Brian Rutenberg, and he said the key to good art is a locked door. So for the artist to be able to be alone and to be able to work, it's really important.
Sure.
So, and I realized that when I did finally take it a little more seriously and decide to have a place on my own. It's funny because people come in here and they'll look, they go out the window visually. They love to look at, and to get them back in here visually is a real big deal.
Come back into my studio. Frankfurt's a nice town to look at from this view, but
I know.
Please be in my studio.
Visually get back in here. A little bit about your impression of painting and on plein air, and for the benefit of people that don't know what that is, maybe you could explain what that term means. Well, it's like painting from life and painting on what's in front of you. So being outside and in open air. And so for me, I just load up my car with all kinds of equipment, all my easels and umbrellas and paint, and I paint out of the back of my car pretty much. So in the places that we went to, you could just drive right up to them and just paint out of the back of your car. schedule days to paint, or do you just like wake up and go, oh my God, this is such a beautiful day, I've got to get out and paint?
Well, a lot of times what I do, because I worked full-time for state government, as a biologist, aquatic biologist at the end, the whole scheduling thing kind of isn't my favorite thing to do, but in a day I'll say, what's the most important thing for me to do today? And if it's painting, I make sure I do that first. So that's the life of a retired person.
Yeah.
You know, to be able to have that capability to say, this is the most important thing, I'm going to do this first.
So, by profession, you were a biologist?
Yes, at the end of my state government career, I was an aquatic biologist, spent a lot of time right by the side of a stream just like this, all over the state. So.
And do you think that has any influence over you?
I think it gives me yes, I think it really does. It gave me I worked with some really talented biologists who just had a way of seeing things, of spotting things, of recognizing and identifying things that I never would have seen. I learned a lot from them.
Opened your eyes.
Yeah, I learned a lot from them.
Yeah.
Especially since I don't have an education in aquatic biology.
I see.
So it was all new, really fresh. Learned a lot from those people, and then so I still love just coming down to the creek.
Right. So do you always come down with a canvas and paints, or do you photograph sometimes and then paint in your studio, or how does that work?
I like to come down and draw first. I mean, the ideal thing would be to come down and sketch and take a lot of photographs, and then come back and paint it. And then take it into my studio and probably tweak it a little bit, just looking at the photographs and the field studies.
Sure, but you say that you draw first.
I come back to the same place.
Is the foundation
yes.
for your paintings,
yes.
right? I mean, you don't just like wildly take strokes without knowing where things are. Sometimes
I do. Sometimes I just come down and paint, but I find that the familiarity from the drawing really, really makes it a better painting. It just improves it. It never makes it worse. It always makes it better. And sometimes if I'm struggling, I'll come back and draw it.
I see.
It's just one of those things that will always make it better. You just can't go wrong with better drawing.
Yeah. I remember when I was in high school, I took this commercial art class 3 hours a day, and the teacher would she would say, if your drawing's not any good, don't waste the paint, because it's not going to make it any better.
No. And it's really important.
So, in looking at your paintings, do you use a knife too?
I do use a knife.
And but you use both knife and brush, right?
Right.
So the brush gives you what? I mean, why do you use a knife? Why do you use a brush?
I use a knife because I use the brush to get the basic foundation in, the lights and darks, the drawing, but I love the tactileness of thick paint. I do. I like laying down really heavy layers of paint. It's very intentional. Like brushes, you can kind of fidget it and just lose what you're doing, but with a palette knife, you can just lay it down. And that's probably the hardest thing to do, is to really just lay down a stroke and leave it alone.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, you want to fidget with it. And so maybe I fidget with the brush until I'm just so tired of it, and then I just can come in with the knife and over the top of it, just lay it down.
I see. If you're in your house and you see like brilliant sunlight, or maybe the creek is up or the creek is down, does that make you want to run out and paint?
Yes.
Okay.
And because I think the other thing is from painting in the same places over and over, you know when it's good there. Like I know here, the light in the morning is probably the best anywhere. For where I paint, this would be a really good morning spot.
Yeah.
Especially in the field.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And then what about the creek? We were talking earlier about how there's so much going on.
Right.
But your paintings are kind of, they kind of get down to the essence, don't they?
And well, I hope. And that's because, and you know, that's one, I think your greatest hopes as an artist is that people can appreciate or feel what you're putting into it. It's sort of a empathetic thing where you're standing in front of it all day and then they're standing in front of it, basically in your footsteps.
Yeah.
And so another thing that I always love is when somebody comes up to my studio and says, "Oh, that looks just like the Elkhorn." It's like,
well, it is.
well, it is the Elkhorn, but that's because I think it has its own thing.
Yeah.
You know,
absolutely.
going on.
The light must shift on you
All
as
the
you're
time.
painting.
I know.
How do you account for that?
Well, one thing I do is I get the drawing in, get in certain blocked in things, and then decide where the light basically is and leave it there and don't chase the light.
Oh, okay.
You just pick a point in time where you really like it. I lay it in and then I don't try to chase it.
Okay.
And then I also I don't try to, I come back another day. I'll come back, come back, it just depends, 2 or 3 times to one place.
Okay.
At the same time of day. I mean, that's ideal. Life isn't like that where you can do that all the time, but ideally, because I live right on the Elkhorn and I have access to it, a lot of times I just kind of conjure it. Just because I drive by it, I'm here all the time, I can just kind of conjure my own imagination of what it is. And some of my paintings are like that, and then other paintings are more from perception of what actually I'm seeing in front of me. And I try to work recently more abstractly, just in the fact that I try to make it very minimal and not so much detail.
Sure.
Because there's a lot of visual chaos when you're down at the creek.
And then do you finish your paintings up here?
Yes, but just very minimally. I don't do a lot up here to the paintings. The ones that I paint outside, it seems counterproductive to come in and repaint over them.
We were talking before about the drying process.
Right.
You brought some paintings into the shop and you said they were kind of dry, or what's the term you used?
New to dry.
New to dry. So how long does it take an oil painting to dry?
Oil paintings take a really long time to dry. I mean, they can say up to a year to totally dry.
Really?
So in the meantime, as they are in different stage of drying, you've got to protect them somehow. Because they're dry to the touch, it's just internally they may be not totally dry. So I use a varnish over them that is breathable. That's just the first line of varnish. And then maybe if somebody buys them and wants to do more varnish later, they can.
Right.
Nobody ever really has, though. And there is enough of a gloss on this varnish. For me, it's a finished enough. I don't like them too glossy.
Yeah, yeah. I noticed that you work in a lot of different sizes.
Yeah.
You have some very large paintings and then a lot of smaller.
Yeah.
Is there something that, is
It's-
it just the mood of the day, or
It's easier to paint
composition?
small outside. So outside paintings are a lot of times smaller than inside paintings. And then a lot of my bigger paintings are paintings that I'm making up. Like these guys over here are totally out of my head.
Really?
Yeah, all three of those basically.
Well, I could see maybe the more abstract one, but
Yeah.
you've been there.
I have, that one's from Cove Springs, but it's not really what I was doing. I kind of stray sometimes. So
That's okay,
yeah,
right?
it is okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do you know when a painting's finished?
So sometimes I think it's finished and it's not. And the beauty of oil paint is you can go back in and keep working it. And so it's easy to overwork, and it's also hard to tell when it's finished. So I just, if I don't feel like it's right or there's something else I need to do or I can't decide if it's finished, I just line them up around the floor and say, you know, and then
I'll
one
come
day
back
you'll
to
come,
you later.
Yeah, and then someday you'll just come in and go, oh, I know exactly what you need. And then one stroke and you're done.
So how do you find that people respond to your paintings? You know, like when you have the open studio or when you're at a showing at a gallery, and do you,
Yeah, that's like one of the hardest things for me. It just is. It's challenging to just put yourself out there and stand in front of it. It just is a vulnerability thing, I think, that, you know, is difficult for me to do. So I love it when I can sell out of my studio. This is where I feel the most comfortable. But, you know, like going to a gallery or like going out and standing there in front of your paintings to me is very awkward. But I'm thrilled when people love it for all the different reasons that you never...
Yeah. What are some of the strangest comments you've ever heard?
Well, one of my favorite was, I won't say who the person's name is,
Please
came
don't.
into my studio and said, "Oh, Betty, you have a long way to go." And this is like when I very first opened my studio. So it was like within one of the first art walks. And so I said, okay, I agree, but I want to show you something. And I pulled out like my favorite painting and I made him look at it. And I told him why I liked that painting and why I thought it was a good painting. And he was like, oh, yeah. So that's...
Oh, you're halfway there.
You know, that's what the challenge comes from. But then somebody else will come in and look at a painting and go, you know, oh, that's where I, you know, met my girlfriend. Or that's
they
where...
They relate to the places.
They relate to the
sometimes.
places, yes.
Yeah.
Or that's where I walked with somebody that was very dear to me. Or that looks like the Elkhorn, where I spent my childhood. Or,
Yeah. So you sell a lot of work.
I sell enough work. I mean, I sell enough work to be able to afford to do it. Which, you know, I rent a studio, I take classes, I buy oil paint, you know. I tell people when they think my prices are too high, it's like, well, you know, a tube of cad yellow light is $27.
Whoa.
So if you think about all the colors and all the tubes and just the paint alone,
Sure.
you know, not
Sure.
even to mention the whole process, but that's and I think another thing is it's really hard to take a private space and like let people in to look at your paintings, all their comments and all the things, you know, sometimes that can be a little overwhelming, but then on the other side of it, it's to get people to look at original art.
Right.
And see what it is and what it entails. So.
But when they have those paint outs.
Yes.
That's a little frustrating for you,
It
right?
is for me. It's too hurried, and I don't like performance painting, I call it. I really don't like painting in front of people. I have a really hard time going somewhere I'm not connected to and just setting up and painting and going home. It's not a way of working that I enjoy.
Yeah.
And it always frustrated me, and I always felt really rushed. And I realized I didn't have to do that.
Yeah.
You know, I
mean,
don't have
your
to
own
do
backyard.
that. I know, because I
You
love...
can take all the time in the world.
So being an extrovert person, I'm very introverted with my artwork.
Yeah.
So that's just
That's
the way it is.
interesting.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
for me, I need to have been here, and I need to have spent a lot of time here.
Right.
Like I went to a friend's house, it was on the South Fork of the Elkhorn, and I drew once, I went back and painted, and I was there for probably 6 hours working on that painting, and just sitting in the same place, and just watch the sun go down across the whole, it's just magic. I mean, that's why I do it, I just love that.
Yeah. So you participate in Art Walk.
I do. I'm
What's
a big
that
believer
like?
in Art Walk. It's well, for me, everybody has a different idea of what Art Walk is. For me, Art Walk is, again, to just educate people about the arts in Frankfort and to bring in as many artists as we can during that time, to have an opportunity to sell their work, to be exposed, and to have the community come out and support them. You know, you would think on the 7th floor of the McClure building, it's pretty obscure. People wouldn't even know we're up here, but we get a really good turnout on Art Walk.
I know. I've been to a few of them, and I'm just amazed that the first time I came to one, I was like, what? You have to go up in this elevator? And then it was just like this whole floor was alive with people.
It's a good place.
It was great. It was great.
You know, I think there's a lot of people, artists here in Frankfort that are really amazing. And I think Frankfort as a whole is ready for it. And I don't look at it from the marketing perspective. You know, it's hard to market art if you don't have art here. That's always been one of my big arguments, is like, until you promote the arts and you get the art here and you get the quality of art, then promote it. Or still be promoting it marketing wise, but build it at least at the same time. So it's always kind of a battle with that, I think.
Well, I mean, my whole mission about doing this show is to let people in Franklin County know that we have a lot of really talented, tremendous artists, and not just fine artists, but, you know, photographers and musicians and poets and I mean, there's a lot of wealth here.
There is.
You know? And I just want people of Franklin County to realize what we've got here.
It's the way that Betty captures the beauty of our landscape that makes me love her work.
Tell me the story about when you had the nude model coming out to your house.
That's actually going to start Saturday.
Oh.
That's the Saturday thing.
So you had to tell the people that were going to deliver wood to...
Well, we're going to have her this Saturday at our house, and it's like everybody wants to come to my house on Saturday to deliver wood, fix the roof, go deer hunting. It's like, not Saturday.
Not this Saturday,
Not this Saturday.